Hey guys, it's me again. I am so struggling with this thing. Anyway, I don't know if you guys just watched a video of me a moment ago or not, but apparently, because I am not very good with technology, I tried to do a video and it didn't look like it recorded the whole thing. As I watched it, played it back, it was just a clip. So I'm gonna have to do this whole thing again. Obviously, this is very important to me. So, please be patient with me. I am learning as I go. I will get better with this technology stuff. Anyway, my name is Johnny Hopkins, Johnny Belinda Hopkins, that is. And I am doing a live because I wrote a book. And the book came in this past weekend, and I was so excited that, I jumped online to do a live to introduce my new book, God's Gift to You. And I did it unscripted, and, I watched it, and I got feedback from people who watched it, who gave me some feedback on my video that I did live. Some of it was good, some of it was constructive criticism. And, I took that information and I played back my video several times, taking notes, trying to make it a shorter video. Anyway, so my book, God's Gift to You, that I wrote is available for sale through Dorrance Publishing Company, 1-800-788-7654. You can purchase the book through there. In the coming weeks, the publishing company will be mailing me some more copies of my book. So I will have some books on me for those who want to purchase the book directly from me. Also, within the coming weeks, the book will eventually be available through Barnes & Nobles and other local bookstores, as well as online through Amazon and Walmart. So I will update you with this information as I get it. In the meantime, like I said, the book can be published from Dorrance Publishing Company, 1-800-788-7654. So my book that I wrote, God's Gift to You. I'm just going to try to give the shortest caption as I can so I don't keep you guys long. Anyway, so this book is a book that I wrote about my journey and experiences of growing up as a child in the home of my mom, whom, she started having children by the time she was like 18, 19 years old. She has 4 children by 3 different men. In the home was just my mom and her children. Those 3 men were not with my mom. My dad stayed in my life. He stayed in touch with me and my sister. And he was a part of our life, even though he wasn't with my mom. My mom continued on from him to have 2 other different other men. Anyway, my mom, she never finished high school, and so she was undereducated, and then she started like experiencing drugs at an early age. So as a child, I grew up in a single parent home with just my mom. The 3 fathers of the children, like I said, they were in and out. They didn't stay. They didn't give her any support financially or otherwise. My mom, we started out in Jamaica Plain Projects, and unfortunately, due to my mom's active addiction and, the men that were involved with my mom also struggled with drug addiction as well. And due to the adults battling drug addiction And I can't speak for my dad, but I know for certain for my mom, who also suffered some mental health issues. There was a lot of violence in our home, and in fact, it was the violence that prompted my mom to move out of Jamaica Plain Projects by the time I was like a little past 6, because there was something that happened in my mother's home involving a child. And I do talk about it in this book. I'm not going to give the book away. It's a sad story, but it's a great story. You would just have to read it. So anyway, due to my mom's, mental health issues and her battle with the disease of addiction, there was a lot of violence in my home between the adults. I'm talking like fist fights would break out, yelling, screaming. It got so bad that by the time I was little after 6 years old, we had to move out of Jamaica Plain Projects. We moved around a few times, until we settled again. I probably was like 8, 9 years old when we did settle again, and that was on Seaver Street in the Roxbury, Dorchester section of Boston, Mass. So anyway, mom was a single parent, 4 kids, 3 different men. All parties involved were abusing drugs, dealing drugs, my mom herself dealing with mental health issues. So this book is going to talk about my journey as a young child growing up in a drug-infested environment. Okay, dealing with, my mom as a young girl. My mom was very violent. There was a lot of physical abuse. There was a lot of mental abuse. There was a lot of sexual abuse. Like, unfortunately, when young adults are battling, the disease of addiction, and mental health issues, the way it affects the children, it was not normal. Okay. But for me, when a child is young and a child is seeing through a child's eye, we see things that we don't necessarily know what we're seeing. We don't necessarily know, like when mom didn't get her drugs, okay, when she couldn't get drugs, like she would start to scream. And it was a scream that would like pierce through to your soul. It shook me on the inside. And I learned, fear at a very young age. Like, even though I loved my mom and I had a deep love for her, like, I was terrified of her. I was terrified of the men she brought around. Being a little girl and watching your mom fight with grown men, like these are grown people, like physically fist fighting. I'm laughing because I just have a weird sense of humor. What's normal to me may not be normal to others, but I find humor in everything. I'm sure it wasn't funny when I was a little girl when I was going through it, but as an adult, like I can look back and, it wasn't all bad. There were some good times. There were some funny times. But then there was like some really, really bad times. And as life continued, it had gotten so bad that the state showed up. Okay. So from the time I was 6 to the time I was about 12, 13 years old, like I said, it was so toxic. It was so dysfunctional. It was so much going on in my mother's household that the state showed up. Back then we called it the Department of Social Services. So the Department of Social Services came in by the time I was like 12, 13 years old and had removed my mother's children from her home. I got placed into protective custody where I was not allowed to have contact with my mom for many years. In the beginning, I was like really angry with the state for coming in and removing me from my mother's home and putting me into protective custody. One, because, I ended up in locked facilities, girls' detention schools, holding facilities, jail cells. I eventually started being placed into foster homes. As a young child, when you are removed from an environment that you grew up in, no matter how toxic it is, no matter how dysfunctional it is, you just cannot understand why you have to be removed from what is familiar to you. Even though it was bad, there was some kind of comfort because, like I said, I had a deep love for my mother. Like, I don't care what my mom did to me. To me, she was just mom. I didn't understand that mom was hurting me, so anyway, even in the care of the state, Department of Social Services, in being in this new environment, and being moved around a lot, some of those foster homes that I ended up in, let me just say, I was born late 60s. So back then in the 70s, living in Boston, there was a lot of prejudice, there was a lot of races, there was a lot of segregation. So there were times when they would have to put me into a Caucasian household because they had nowhere else for me to go. And sometimes it was not good because, little black girl in the system, in a white or Caucasian, let me keep it professional, in a Caucasian household, the way I was treated by some of those, Caucasian homes that took me in to care for me when my mom could not, was very traumatic. There is good and bad in everything. So let me just say that, through the foster care system, yes, I had some really bad experiences, but I also had some good experiences. By the time I was 15 years old, I did meet a couple that took me into their home, and this was after years of being in the system. I spent like maybe a year of my life in a detention home for girls. There were quite a few foster homes that didn't work out, several locked detention facilities, before I settled into a foster home that, seemed to be the better of the choices. I can't say it was all good. This book talks about my journey through all of that. It talks about mental health issues. It talks about the disease of addiction. It talks about growing up in an environment infested by drug dealers, people abusing drugs, having children at a young age, unfortunately abusing the children, because when you have a bunch of young adults, dealing drugs, abusing drugs, they become violent with each other. And unfortunately, eventually, they become violent with the children. The book titled God's Gift to You, let me just state that, this is not a story where I am trying to push religion on anyone or convert anyone or have anyone believe in something that they don't. Whatever you believe in or don't believe in is your choice. For me, my choice, I was taught about a higher power. And for me, I choose to call that higher power God. Because although I never heard the word God in my mother's household or heard the word church in my mother's household, like I did come across families that introduced me to religion. But even though I'm not a very religious person, I consider myself to be a very spiritual person. I do believe in a higher power whom I choose to call God. And I gotta say, like, even as a little girl in my mother's household, when all these chaotic things were going on around me, like, there was always something in the back of my mind whispering to me, telling me, like, this is not normal, even though I had this false illusion in my head that this chaos was normal because this is what I was born into. This was my first exposure to life. I grew up in that environment. I grew up in that insanity. And, years ago, we didn't have all the information that people have today. There was no social media. Because I'm in my 50s, when I was a young girl, there was not even cable, okay? Even the medical information has changed dramatically over the years. When I was a little girl and people experienced hyperactivity, learning disabilities, like, we was just called stupid, bad, badass kids, stupid. Now they have, like, dyslexia, learning disabilities, ADHD. Like, we didn't have all that information when I was growing up. So, going through this journey, and not having the information that they have today, like, you were just, like, in this world where, you just accepted what was going on. It didn't seem odd. It didn't seem strange. You wake up every day to it. You go to sleep to it every night. But like I said, there was always something in the back of my mind in my mother's household, that would whisper things to me. I didn't know what it was. I probably didn't even acknowledge it. But, like, I remember, like, in my mother's household feeling like, God made a mistake. I don't belong here. A lot of times I wished I was an only child. And that was just to escape the insanity, because when you have 4 children in a household with adults who are dealing drugs, using drugs, being, like, aggressive towards each other, physically fist fighting, yelling, screaming, like, this is what was taught to the children. And unfortunately, like, me and my siblings, like, we were violent to each other. Even though we in our own sick, twisted way, like, loved each other, like, it was normal to physically be fist fighting. It was insanity. So this book is gonna talk a lot about, that stuff, what it's like to be young, growing up in a drug-infested neighborhood with young adults who, are abusing drugs, having underlying mental health issues, having children, and unfortunately, abusing those children, abuse, neglect. Anyway, so again, when I talk about God's gift to you, there was a situation, like I said, in our earlier days when we lived in Jamaica Plain Projects, like, children who lived in our home, their lives were taken from them, and I talk about it in detail. I'm honest, I'm open, I don't hold back. So when I talk about God's gift to you, for me, it was the fact that I'm still here, that I'm still alive, that I survived it, that I am somewhat mentally stable, because a lot of people, if they didn't die, and they're still alive, like, some of them are half out of their mind, they have learned behaviors. They have learned mental health behaviors. So for me, the blessing is that, I'm aware of a lot of things as far as mental health situations, as far as battling a disease of addiction. My mom never finished high school, so when I say she was very undereducated, she was very undereducated, and because of that, in my teenage years, like, I knew how important it was to get educated, like, it took me a long time to get there. In fact, I never finished high school myself, but when I had my first child, I went to school, I got my GED, I went to a 2-year college, and, like, it was just important for me to be educated, I wanted to do better for my daughter, than what was done for my mother's 4 children. So this book, again, it has a lot of information in it. It is a journey. You will laugh, you will cry, you'll be up, you'll be down, you'll be mad. Like, it's a journey, it's real life stuff. It's not a fairy tale. If you're sensitive to children being abused, like, this book is not for the faint at heart. It's a sad reality. Children are abused every day. People are battling diseases of addiction every day. People are battling mental health issues every day. So please, please, please get you a copy. Again, Dorrance Publishing, 1-800-788-7654. Get you a copy. It's very informative. It's a good read. It's going to help you to understand, people better. The world is full with people that are, battling, things that people don't know about, mental health issues, the disease of addiction, violence, abuse. Like, when I was a kid growing up, there was restraints put on us. Things like the parents would say to the children, like, what goes on in my house stays in my house. Don't discuss my business out in public. These restraints were put on children so that the parents could continue doing what they were doing, protecting themselves from, being held accountable for their behaviors. So to that I say, like, for young children, like, we have to educate our children, man. We have to let them know, like, not to keep secrets. Like, I used to tell my daughter, as a child, because I didn't trust myself. And I would tell my daughter, if you even feel like your mother is hurting you, you go to school, you tell a teacher, you tell a guidance counselor, you tell a best friend, you tell somebody. Because I knew for myself, how my childhood affected me mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and I didn't want to do that to my child. Like, I wanted to give my child's life a chance, a chance that mine's never had. And let me just say, for this book, for people who are in your darkest places, this book is a guide. It will give you hope. It will let you know, like, it's okay. There are things in this book I thought I would take to my grave. There is no way I was going to tell the world how traumatic my childhood was. Get you a copy. Again, it's a very good read. It addresses a lot of real life issues. It's not a fairy tale. It's not a sad story. My purpose in writing this book is to give people hope, that you can survive it. You just got to hold on. It's going to get better. Seek help. You know, don't be afraid. You know, that you're not alone. You know, there are millions of people in this world who have gone through and who continue to go through. You know, for me, I know that anything is possible. If you read this book and you take this journey with me, you will see for yourself, you know, there are miracles happening every day. You know, children are strong. They are, how you say that word? Vigilant? I don't know. Help me out, people. But children, you know, we're very flexible. You know, we can tolerate a lot of things. And, you know, it doesn't make it okay, but it is okay. You know, whatever the situation is, whatever the circumstances is, you know, you're going to be okay. And you can survive it, and you can come out of it confident, you know, hopeful for a better life. You know, I'm living proof of that, you know. Anyway, I'm going to end my live. I'm sure I did a lot of talking. You know, I want to thank people for supporting me, giving me feedback, you know, advising me, guiding me, because this is something new for me. Like, I've never created anything before. So creating this book and getting it out there and promoting it and marketing it, although the publishing company would do a lot of that stuff for me, you know, some things I like to take into my own hands. You know, I want to make it personal for those who know me. And I've lived a lot of places and I know a lot of people. So you guys know, please support me, get you a copy. It's a great, great read. You're going to love it. Thanks, guys. Bye.